Good job, well done. I'd like to pose a question that I hope all of the panellists can contribute to. First of all, Chelsea, we heard from yourself about a range of products that are available to help plan things like grazing decisions, or if you're not in the rangelands, planting decisions, those sorts of things. We've heard that there's much better ability to look at the probabilities, for instance, of the early onset of the wet season. Alex, you've outlined soil carbon and how important soil carbon is, and Carolyn, we heard from you not just around soil carbon, but also tree growth and the contribution that vegetation, as in timber, can make to sequestering carbon. Chelsea, what I'm wondering is, can we go beyond talking of these climate products with grazing management and also use some of these products to talk about perhaps the potential, upcoming potential over the next season or two in terms of growing timber for the carbon market, or perhaps better pasture productivity over the coming season, and the ways that may actually link then to carbon farming. So I'll just ask your opinion first, if you think those products can also inform some of these other emerging markets.
Absolutely. I think all of these, climate products, they're for temperature and rainfall, and those are the main things that drive essentially our carbon production and sequestration through grass growth, so pasture management, and of course tree growth and sort of revegetation or increasing biodiversity efforts, things like that, all come down to rainfall. You can't grow anything, or you can't, get rid of anything without sort of the weather and the rainfall and the temperatures. So there absolutely is scope within these products to use them for this carbon farming initiative, and to better manage our pastures, and to better manage any existing woodlands or larger plants that we want to remain there or to grow faster or anything like that. It all comes down to these forecasts. So absolutely, David, they can be used across the board.
Great, Chelsea, thank you. Alex, I might jump to you next. So I guess you've heard Chelsea's reply there, and I just wonder if you can put your thinking cap on and suggest some ways that, more from that soil carbon perspective, people might use those forecasting tools, or predictive tools, I should say. Yes. And I'm actually not sure, in this world of Zoom, Alex, I think you might be on mute. No, I think we're having some technical issues with Alex. So, Carolyn, I might ask yourself, probably more from a tree growth perspective, how you perceive that some of the tools that Chelsea has outlined to us could be used.
Oh, I think any of the tools that improve the predictability of the weather on various forms, dry, wet. It's just as important to know if it's not going to rain as it is to know if it is going to rain. Yes, I think the more precision, but I really want to acknowledge that trying to predict the weather, which is a chaotic and dynamic system, is probably need artificial intelligence to cope with that one. But no, any improvement that we can get in precision on those things, I think would be a terrific advantage. Years ago, I went to a thing from the Charles Sturt University, ran in Bathurst, and somebody had done a study on if you could predict that exact amount of rainfall on the exact day, what it would mean in economic terms. And I forget the figures now, but it was billions and billions. And some of the benefit was in what you would not do, like there's just as much. So I think some of the things that Angus White was talking about this morning or earlier today, when you make the decisions, and the weather predictions plays a huge part in those decisions, but we also look out the window.
Yes, of course, Carolyn. I'm sure that we all do, and Chelsea, I think you summed it up so nicely just right at the start. But we don't actually have that magic crystal ball that can tell us precisely how much rain is going to fall. We do have some questions coming through in the chat, which is terrific. Thank you, Chelsea. There's one here for you first from Sally. What have you found to be the biggest barrier to tool or forecast uptake by producers?
Oh, well, thanks for that question, Sally. Interestingly enough, I might actually, I'll explain what my thoughts on that, but I would guess that they're probably similar to what we just heard about, some uptake issues around carbon farming. So there definitely is a major issue, I think, with trust. Lots of producers who have either, looked at a forecast and it didn't eventuate, or maybe they misinterpreted it and made a decision and then it didn't pan out for whatever reason, then they lose trust in the forecast. And so they don't actually want to see any new tools, because they're like, well, if the old ones didn't work, why would the new ones work? And so I think trust in the forecast, and which partially comes down to correct interpretation, is a major player in barriers to uptake, which it sounds like it's very similar for carbon farming.
Yes, Chelsea, thank you. Unfortunately, I think Alex has dropped out of our call, so another one of those little technical issues. Oh no, he's here. That's great.
Still can't hear.
I'm afraid we probably still can't hear you just at the moment, Alex, which is a real shame, because there was a question for you, actually a couple of questions here that were ready here for you. But look, this is 2021 and we're used to all the memes and everything else about the technology going wrong, where we're trying to have live conversations right across the world. But I think the great thing is that we do have that ability to have a conversation globally. And I know that we do have some international certainly participants within the conference, which is terrific. Some of them may not understand perhaps some of the nuances of some of the discussions, but I would just like to come back, Carolyn, to your point a little bit earlier, when you were talking about what can be the rather at times controversial and contentious issue of vegetation management or vegetation clearing. Obviously, trees play a major role in being able to sequester carbon, but without wanting to get into the details of perhaps what people are and are not allowed to do, how do you see the future perhaps of utilising trees in a balanced ecosystem, as you talked about, of really using trees as a way forward for our rangelands in sequestering carbon?
Oh, I think trees sequester a great deal of carbon. I think it's roughly a third is in the leaves and things, a third in the trunks and branches, and another third underground. And I think under the underground sequestration in soils and the microbial life are really important for our sustainability, long-term sustainability. It's one of the things that regenerative ag is very keen on. But I think that there has been a bit of an overemphasis on trees. Thickened trees, and I know this is contentious, particularly in Queensland, but there is a lot of thickening. I'm not young anymore, and when I was our part of the world and up north, where I've spent quite a bit of time, there are more trees now than when I was a child. They're just bleeding obvious. There's no doubt about it. And where you have thickened trees,
I think we've only got about a minute left, but I was just advised there are a couple of questions there that relate to my talk, which I'm happy to talk to. One was from John, and that was oh wait, no, I've lost the question. sorry, yeah, about adjacent carbon projects on neighbouring properties, and that's certainly an issue, particularly if you get into the area of looking at co-benefits, which we've done a bit of work on. And I'm currently working on a new project which is looking specifically at collaborative approaches to carbon farming, and whether or not there's these opportunities that could emerge for neighbouring properties to work together. And I guess it's particularly important as carbon farming moves out of the rangelands into higher rainfall areas where property sizes are smaller. There may be a need to actually work together and to aggregate enough enough land and enough carbon sequestration to make it viable. And one of the key questions that's emerged so far in those interviews that we're doing is it really important for people to collaborate with their direct neighbours? Or is perhaps they would be more willing to collaborate with people who are like-minded, practicing similar, possibly regenerative agriculture practices and things like that, which may not be their direct neighbours. So that question of direct neighbour versus a sort of community of practice that emerges. But one of the benefits of doing it with direct neighbours is that the co-benefits that might come apart from the actual carbon that gets sequestered, but things like biodiversity benefits, reducing soil erosion that might have flow-on effects to water quality and things like that. Those benefits would be enhanced if it's neighbouring properties working together and focusing on the same practices. So there's definitely an interest in that, but at this stage, there's no real incentive to collaborate. There's no, you don't get paid more for your carbon credits if you're working together with your neighbours to produce them. But possibly if we get better at incentivizing the co-benefits, there could be arrangements where co-benefits are worth more if you're actually doing it directly with your neighbours and taking a landscape scale approach to those benefits. So we need to get the incentives right, I guess, is what I'm saying. But there's not much happening at the moment around that I'm aware of. There was another question about the mining sector and whether we can learn any lessons there, particularly about distributional fairness. I think probably the biggest lessons I think we could learn from the mining sector would probably be around procedural fairness, which is the ways that mining companies engage with their communities, and particularly lots of those lessons about regular contact. One of the key messages that's come across through lots of the social license research in mining is the idea that quality of connection to a local community is much more important than quantity. So it's not about coming out regularly in a superficial sort of way. It's actually about deeply embedding yourself in the community and making that connection, and showing you that you're there for the long term and you're there to take on the risk that's associated with it. Cool. I think I've just got the wind up call. So yeah, thanks. Hopefully we each got a chance to answer a few questions there, even though we've lost the rest of the panel. Thanks.